Everybody get up, no need to cram now. We got a real jam going down, going down, going down, going down, going down, going down. Welcome to the IntelliJAMS. Here's your chance.
Alex, how's it going, dude?
Good. How are you living?
All good here. All good. Good to see you, man.
What do you want to jam on this week?
All right. So, been spending a lot of time with my team talking about a concept, infinity testing. And so I wanted to jam on that because it's super top of mind.
Infinity testing. All right. I'm going to hit you with the same question that you usually hit me with when I bring up a term. What is that? What is infinity testing?
Okay. So infinity testing, hopefully the name starts to trigger some intuitive reaction, but infinity testing is the ability to dynamically, automatically, using AI tooling, generate new opportunities, new variations to test, implement those tests, execute those tests, dynamically allocate traffic towards the winning version of that, and then continually optimizing and iterating infinitely. So we had A/B testing, we have multivariate testing, and this is sort of the extension of that, which is now infinity testing, which is just a continuous optimization.
I like that. So when you think about infinity testing, or you think about kind of this like new frontier of testing overall, do you view how do you see that working practically for like me on the brand side? I'm going to put my brand hat on for a second, where it's like, do I set like an objective or a goal and have like infinity testing kind of like self-optimized towards that? Or do you see it even deeper than that, where like I might not even know what my goal is, and like we let the testing, I don't know, magic figure it out?
This is getting pretty meta, but I think that this is an agentic experience in my mind, and there's a couple parts to this. So one part is identifying opportunities and seeing, hey, I'm looking at a lot of data, and like maybe it's heat map data, and clickstream data, and it's behavioral data, or it's profitability data. So we have all sorts of data that we can feed into this. We have all this data. Here's an opportunity that we think that we can improve operational excellence in the business, to use a term that we've talked about before. Number two, we then need to create a hypothesis or a suggestion or solution that addresses that problem. So we see that page A has really low profit per visitor. A hypothesis is that because that's really low converting, let's provide a new design to that page. And then the third step is actually like instrumenting that, coding that up, actually generating that idea, and then going to the market, and like going into your tech stack and trying that out and showing that to some fraction of visitors. So I see it very much as this like agent iteration in motion. I think that with the evolution that I'm seeing in AI right now and with agents, it's super collaborative. I think that it's going to ask you, what are you trying to optimize for? How would you think about this trade-off? I'm seeing this sort of dynamic as a trade-off in the data. What do we want to optimize for, or how do we think about that trade-off? And so I think that we should think of this as an extension of our team, as with a lot of the AI agents these days. So that's sort of my vision.
I like that you talked about the trade-offs there, because like I how do I want to say this? In previous roles, when we would talk about like the concept of, hey, let's automate this, let's let AI take over for you, I think a lot of people both love it and hate it at the same time. They love it in the sense that like, oh, that's less work for me, but they hate it in the sense that like it feels like a loss of control. And I really like that concept of like, hey, can we have the agent ask about the trade-offs? Like, hey, this looks like it is a lower converting experience, but hey, it actually has a higher AOV through this experience. Like, what do you think of this trade-off, Adam? Like, is this what you're looking for, or do we need to optimize this in a different way? Because like that was my biggest fear when we first started I think last week you kind of like teased this idea to me and I was a little bit skeptical of it. And I like this trade-off conversation because that eases my mind on, hey, I'm not just going to let this kind of like run, self-optimize and like figure it out, but like I'm going to be interacting with this and being in control of those trade-offs and like, I guess kind of like have my hand on the tap a bit so I can have that control, or not necessarily like a ton of control, but not feel like I have a loss of control with the experience.
Totally. Yeah, I think that control is really important. One way I've seen this done in a slightly different paradigm, and I want to call out Postscript. I think that they have instrumented something very similar to this in a 250 character world of SMS or whatever the constraints are in SMS. I think that LLMs are have been well equipped to do this for a long time. Whereas when it comes to web development, design, and execution, I think that LLMs are only just starting to get there, but we're almost there. But with texts, Postscript has this concept. They also use the term infinity testing, which is, I think it's an amazing term, where the LLM provides suggestions around copy. It's here are 3 alternatives that we think might be more on brand or more compelling. And it provides justification as to why those are alternatives. And then you approve them. And so it has both the input, the managing up of why, and then the control of I can approve or reject. And then that is also reinforcement to the LLM of what works and doesn't work for you. So I think that the ability to have context and be able to communicate the why as well as the approval is a really good way to get around some of that control.
You said a few things in there that I want to double click on. So the why behind it, I think that's really interesting, especially in the world of testing. Even if the experience can help you understand hey, you tested this and here's the results, and help you get an alternative opinion to why that happened. I think that we've jammed in the past on, is testing science or art, and we basically came to the conclusion that it's both, and it's hard to balance those two things. So maybe this provides that right level of balance, or hey, Adam, you're taking more of an artistic opinion based approach to this, here's what the data is telling you, or hey, you're being very data driven here, and the customer experience might be suffering for some reason or another. Other thing that you hit on there as you were talking about it is how do I want to describe this? The LLM is there for text. It's more specific, I guess, in a text context than it is in the web dev world. So from your perspective, this concept of infinity testing when it comes to D2C brands on their site, how far away do we think this world is currently? Is this a pipe dream, or is this something that's kind of around the corner?
I think we're a few months away, honestly. The pace. So I don't know if specificity is the right word. I think it's more about sophistication and complexity. So writing text messages is a lot simpler than writing code, right? We used to all write text messages with press 7 4 times to get a T, and that was sufficient. And so now, if LLMs, 2 years ago were sufficient at writing text messages and Shakespeare and, poetry, they were good at very narrow, write a Python function to do the Fibonacci sequence. Now they're writing applications. And so I think that what's exciting to me is just Claude 4 just came out. You have Figma releasing sort of its agentic AI experience. So there are all sorts of on the design and development and analytics capabilities. There's so many new features that are just coming out every single week. It's so hard to keep up. And I think that in my experience and with writing code and using some of these AI agents, it's gone from okay, but you need a human in the loop to almost, and especially maybe another innovation that I've seen, and I didn't totally understand when people were using the word agentic, but my interpretation of this, and I see this when even just in a Claude chat, there is a recursive self-monitoring corrective nature of it, where I'll ask a question, hey, I have this data set. Can you help me categorize it? And it'll take a pass. And then it'll be like, you know what? 40% of them are in this other category. That's not quite good enough. Let me try again. And so the fact that it's able to self-regulate and has the awareness of the output to then iterate recursively and improve it, that to me is the experience where, hey, we need to not just be able to do these tasks, code this up, design this thing, but it needs to also evaluate and monitor and iterate on itself where, hey, you did this design, but that actually doesn't look great. Or like, it could be better. Or you coded this up, but it doesn't quite look like the design. And here are the differences. And being able to have the orchestration automatically with an LLM on top of LLMs, and you have this sort of multi-layer approach that is iterative in nature, I think is really important.
It's kind of like rubber ducky-esque. Like, hey, I want to run a test, and like all of a sudden I'm kind of jamming with myself on whether this is a good idea or is it matching what I thought like before. Like what you were talking about there, like where my head goes is I have my hypothesis. Hey, let's like go put this into practice. Let's try to instrument it. And as I'm instrumenting it, it's like, oh, this actually probably isn't going to have the effect that you were looking for. Let's kind of like go back and like to the drawing board and think about that. Like that's something I hadn't even thought about, kind of just like rubber ducky testing without like you and I talking back and forth. It's like, I'm just having that experience with AI to get to the best, even before I launch it. Like just, hey, let's get this into the best spot possible.
And I mean, and it went from rubber duck, because I used to rubber duck with ChatGPT, and it went from rubber duck to like actually to a level of consciousness that is because of its own self-awareness and like the awareness of the quality of the output that is like more than the duck, like it went from rubber duck to like dog, man's best friend. Something, if I were to try and extend that metaphor, it's maybe it's not quite human, but it went from being inanimate and just sort of reflecting back to actually responding and reacting and challenging. And I think that's a huge change.
Cool. So infinity testing, Adam thinks
I'm excited.
It's a few months away.
If any brands are out there or partners are out there and want early access and previews and be part of the beta and design on this, I am super open.
Hit us up. Let's get you involved.